Dashing through the snow.
What is
And on
happening?
a open sleigh. This is mostly all figured out today. Welcome
Great transition.
to the Mostly All Figured Out podcast. This is your host, Emily Louie. And it's November, which in my world means it's Christmas music time. My guest today, I'm so happy to have a guest here right now, and this one especially, is someone that we should all thank. Everyone listening right now, just say thank you real quick. I'll wait. Did you do it? Because I'll know. My guest today embodies the phrase, for the people. He is a writer, photographer, community organizer, and activist. According to his LinkedIn, which hasn't been updated in a long time.
What? Did you know we still had one?
You sure do. In his past life, he has held roles at the Institute on Religion and Public Policy, Buffalo First, and for Councilmember Michael J LoCurto. He was an organizer for Coalition for Economic Justice. He co-founded and is now a board member for Cooperation Buffalo, an organization that trains and educates in cooperative economics and supports the startup of cooperative-owned businesses. He was the deputy director of movement building for Push Buffalo, and at the moment, he is an interim director for Our City Action Buffalo, a multiracial organization that builds power through grassroots political organizing. Most recently, very vocal over the redistricting, aka gerrymandering, of Buffalo's 9 council districts. I know I missed at least one other job in there he's had, and he's definitely a part of at least one more board. And on top of all of that, he and his partner Jennifer are also foster parents to a 7 and a 2-year-old. Did I get those ages right?
7.5, 2.5. They
Okay.
just celebrate their half birthdays, and Journey takes it very
Oh.
seriously. But yes.
Sorry, Journey. Got you. Not to mention the fact that his laugh is contagious if you haven't already figured that out already, and you can hear it from a mile away. Please welcome Harper Bishop.
Applause!
Yay!
Emily, it's so great to see you. So great to
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah.
And I'm finally able to make it down to the public library, which there's a lot going on here. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, there is a lot going on here. I love being in the studio. I love feeling like I'm a part of the city here. So first, I'm going to start with a hard-hitting question for you. Where do you fall on Christmas music in November?
Well, I have to say, Mariah Carey had a tweet at midnight on November 1st that was like, it's time.
Yes.
And Queen Mariah can basically do whatever she wants, so I'm just going to follow whatever Mariah Carey says. So, it might not be popular. I'm going against the grain here. This pretty much is my job and my life. So,
True.
Yeah, so I'm going to just let people be happy. I say go for it.
Thank you. Okay, this is my thing, right? So I shared a Mariah Instagram.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen it, but she's shown riding what may be a Peloton bike. I don't know. It's a bike. I only know that because Cody from Peloton re-shared it. But she's riding a bike in a witch's costume,
right.
Okay? And she's like laughing, it's black and white, and then all of a sudden it flashes and she's in like a Santa suit and like...
This is exactly the tweet I saw,
Yes.
and it's wonderful.
It's
and
great.
then I wrote my sister a text message and said, well, Beth, you know what time it is. And she was like, I've been waiting for this day all year.
Yes, Beth, thank you. People, so I shared that, and then I got this little, I really love the Peanuts, Charlie Brown and Snoopy.
Yeah, right.
So I got at Target recently, they had like a Charlie Brown Christmas, like with the Christmas tree and like the little crew and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was wearing that, and I was drinking from like a Christmas mug, and I shared that with the song, Christmas time is here, in the background on my Instagram, and some people were mad. And I'm like, here's the thing.
Come on.
Here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
In 2022, why do we have to rain on people's parades?
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. It's like we've lived through a global pandemic. There's a rise in fascism. Like there's a lot of things happening that we can be upset about. Let's not be upset about someone having a good time.
Right. Like let me just listen to Christmas music, and I'm not gonna force you to unless you're watching my stories. You could just skip it.
Right. No, I'm with you.
All right.
Since you can't see it, Emily just gave like the biggest eye roll of all time. Like,
I've been mad about it for a full
people.
24 hours, but I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, I'm with you. I used to not feel this way, but I have since moved. So we can always change our opinions, you know?
That's right.
It's okay.
Excellent. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
On this podcast, we talk about discovering and pursuing our passion. And frankly, I think you have too many. But honestly, you've been involved and stay involved with many different organizations and movements. You've given your life and your voice to standing up for justice and creating systemic change. Where does your drive for justice come from? Where did it originate?
That's a really good question, and one that I think I have a different answer to all the time. I just think it's like the memory that comes to me or the thought that comes to me at the moment when somebody asks me. So I don't think I have like a very definitive moment, but I think maybe I might actually share this one with my mom. I normally don't, but she instilled in me from a very young age just the idea that we're not doing things, well, first of all, I'll back up. I grew up in a pretty religious household, and we went to church every Sunday, and our values were established that we weren't doing things for even people, we were doing them for God, and my grandmother kind of instilled those ethos into me as well. So when we did things around her house, it wasn't that we were expecting anything in return, but often she would, give us $5 or give us a treat or something for doing the thing that we were asked to do. And so I think that, biblically, there's obviously a lot in there that would say, what do we do but to seek justice and to love mercy, and that Micah in the book of the Bible that kind of speaks to me, and that prophet and what he was about. I think that's kind of the genesis and the first kind of feelings I have about justice. Mm-hmm. I think, however, and I've spoken to you and many other people quite candidly about, though I think that the church that I grew up in was kind of missing it, and that it didn't, Micah and the prophets that were talking about justice, it actually didn't fulfill a lot of that actually it had a more charitable, or kind of we're giving because someone is less fortunate than us, instead of justice that we are peers with people and they have the same self-autonomy and decision-making, are just as powerful as us. And a lot of the unlearning and relearning that I've done as an adult in joining social justice movements is to realize and to turn that those ethos that I learned as a kid, to further them and to have them be what is actually biblical instead of what is in the what I find is unfortunately like a Christian nationalist or white supremacist view of how to do church. And so now I do church out in the world, and I do it in a framework that means that Black and brown and communities of color and those who people would deem less fortunate but that I deem historically marginalized actually have as much to offer to me as I have to offer them, and that means we're in mutual self-interest and solidarity instead of a relationship where the power dynamic is absolutely incorrect and off and not biblical in my perspective. So I think that's the short theological and historical nature of how I come to justice work.
Do you have an idea of at what point in your life you made the realization that this idea of like helping the less fortunate and being charitable and all of that where most of us are grown up in that theology, as you say, do you know when that transition happened for you, when you were like, wait a second, this is not the right way?
Yeah, I think it was when I moved back to Buffalo, and a lot of the folks in the social justice movement that I've been in collaboration or partnership with for over a decade really were patient enough to correct me and my language and interrupt my thought processes and ask me to rethink what it is that I was saying and doing and the frame and lens I was putting on it. People really close to me who I still to this day really thank. And that's not the place I was in, I'm sure, when they first told me these things, right, I was probably, as you know, I'm a very opinionated person, so someone telling me and shattering my worldview and telling me that I'm wrong over and over probably didn't do well for my ego. But now those are amongst my closest comrades, friends, and people that I really check my thinking with when I'm in a moral dilemma or I'm trying to sharpen my political analysis. I'll ask them, does this sound right? I'm really lost here. Can you tell me more information, background? And, we're working with Journey right now is the most powerful thing you can say is, I don't know. And that's how you get help, and that's how you learn a path forward. And so one of my favorite things about being a community organizer is that I learn about things all the time that I have no idea about, but it's the community who teaches me that here's the problem or the challenge that we're going through, here's a viable solution, and even if I don't know what that thing is, and then I get to go research it and find experts and people who do know what it is, learn really in depth very quickly what it is, and get to the problem, to get to the crux of the problem and systemically and institutionally change that. So I tell people all the time, you gave an intro about redistricting and us making a lot of noise this year. I truly did not know what a geographer did up until about 3 months ago. I absolutely understand gerrymandering, but I did not know how it can impact and affect our entire democracy and undermine it until this year. A community land trust, of course, I know the basis of what a community land trust and collective ownership of land, but I had no idea the intricacies of it before we started one in the Fruit Belt. And so I tell people all the time, like, my favorite thing about being a community organizer is the amount of learning I get to do in community and with community members.
That is really cool to hear, especially, I think, as adults, especially as young adults, we all tend to think that we have to know everything.
Totally. Yeah.
But that's really where so much growth and progress is. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting too, like hearing you say what it took for you to change your perspective. It took both the people having the patience and love really to be able to like have this conversation with you, and it took you having the humility and being open to what they were saying, even after having a lifetime of something completely different. So it's like, so when I think about that, I'm like, oh, we have so much work to do. How do we, especially in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of like encouraging people to have difficult conversations, but how do we create these settings where we have both types of people available to have successful conversations like that? That's where I get frustrated, because I'm like, I would love to have this conversation with these people, but I don't feel like it's
going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's going to be received or, whatever.
And I actually tell my story to as many people as possible because I want folks to realize that people do change. And sometimes it is incremental change. Sometimes it happens overnight. But more usual than not, it takes time. But that people shouldn't think that just because they don't see a change immediately that it's not happening. And that they can be in it for the long haul, and to start that conversation today, because who knows where it will land tomorrow or the next day. Mm-hmm. And so if you looked at my life, 15, 20 years ago, it'd be the polar opposite of what it is today. Mm-hmm. So as you said, there's people having patience and the love and the correction that led me to the place I am, and now thinking about the impact that I'm able to have in the community because of that. I think it should hearten all of us. And I would also add here, one of the things recently, I think on the left and just in the movement at large, we see a lot of call-out culture, and we see people taking back power, which I think taking back power is really important. I also think, though, that when we see our peers or people that are at the same level of power as us and the same access of power, that those conversations are better had with call-in, intent, because the people who are doing harm are are vertical, not horizontal, and they're not our peers. You know, the people who are doing harm. Elon Musk just took over Twitter. We know the impact that will have, and the hate speech that will come from it, etc. And so when we spend our time, you know, losing sight of the fact that it's people with billions and millions of dollars who are doing, you know, the harm, that's not to say or to discount or discredit the harm that we can do to each other individually and interpersonally. Of course, I'm not saying that, but I think that sometimes, again, even in our best intent to call people forward and hold them accountable, we do more harm to each other. And so, you know, I'm just trying to warn and kind of give context of the conversations that you're trying to have with people, how much deep canvassing and having conversations over and over with people we know can change their opinion, and we don't necessarily have to. That's not like letting them away with anything.
Yeah.
It's just continuing a conversation so that we can continue to have a conversation and they don't feel cornered into a place of not having receptiveness. And I think that that's what people did, was probe me. Like, oh, well, where does that line of logic take you? Or say more about that, instead of, you know, there were people who definitely had the answer key, you know, and could have, you know, hit me over the head with the statistics and the books and the references that would have easily debunked what I was saying. And still they gave me my humanity and my dignity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the reason that I changed.
In high school, I was vice president of the pro-life club at Holy Angels Academy. And in college, I started a pro-life club at Canisius College, right? And so I was vigilant on that. I mean, it was a part of my identity. And anyone I would talk to, they'd be like, especially once I got into college and friends in, you know, my first job and my best friend Alex, like we would have many debates. And I respect these people very much. And it's just a totally different narrative that we're fed, especially for me as you know, from birth, I was fed this narrative, right?
Yeah, I think this is actually the basis of our friendship, is that we can relate on many topics.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even remember when it was, but I know that at some point, like we were both late in the office because I used to work at Push with you, if that's not already clear for our listeners here. I believe you were talking something about Roe v. Wade, and you spoke to me as if like, of course, you're on our team here. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then I was thinking to myself, though, I respect Harper so much, and I'm very much in line with all of his values and the work he's doing. Maybe I should rethink this and start looking at things differently. And it was a few years ago now. And that's when I really first started like reframing and looking at, see, you didn't even know that. You changed me.
I had no idea.
You changed me. I know, because I was embarrassed. I didn't want you to know. Now you know.
But see, this is exactly what we're talking about, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And just so you're aware, that's also the journey that you just talked about. That's also been a journey for me, because as I grew up in the Pentecostal church, it was understood that we are pro-life. And so I might have just been a couple years ahead of you, but like the impact that it has when we talk to people as respected colleagues and give humanity and all those things.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So that's cool. You're changing lives left and right. For folks who may not be familiar, can you first define movement work? And second, tell us what you think is the biggest challenge in doing this work.
Yeah, so I think that when we think about the broader movement, we think about that being for economic, social, racial justice. When you named all the things that I'm involved in, they might be, to some people, they might think that they're disparate or they're just different passions and interests, but to me, they're highly connected and interwoven together. We live all of those lives in one, at one time. And Audre Lorde, who, if you don't know, I would start with Sister Outsider, which is a book that I declare definitively probably changed and saved my life in many respects. But Audre Lorde, respected poet, Black queer activist and organizer, who many of us in the movement do look up to, she would say, we don't have one issue lives, there is no such thing as a one-issue life, and I use the example quite often, and it's silly and it's meant to be, but it's like we don't have a transit problem on Monday and education problem on Tuesday and housing on Wednesday. Of course, all of those things are happening simultaneously and interconnected and interwoven, and so the movement for equity and justice really is that push towards a multiracial, multi-generational place where all of us are understanding that we need to be in it together, and we try to build across class lines and racial lines and gender lines, because that's how they separate us. And the they that I'm talking about here is the 1%, the people who have the money at the top, who talk about trickle-down economics, that it's going to come down to the poor and working class, and we know that it never does. And so what do they do but use race and gender and sexual orientation and gender identity and citizenship and all these other markers and demarcations to separate us and to keep us from one another, to have us turn on each other and to think that we are the people who are the problem and causing each other harm, and to use a scarcity framework instead of an abundance framework. We know that there is more than enough wealth in this country. It's just how it is being distributed that is actually, in my opinion, criminal and wrong and morally corrupt. And so when we all come together, when we can see past that, when we can show the powers that be and the power elite and the 1% economy that keeps turning and extracts and exploits from all of us, that's how we start to solve these issues. That's how we come together. That's how we build community. That's how we build the loving, beloved community that Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about so eloquently. And that is the basis and the premise of what movement work is. Now, what are the biggest challenges to that?
Well,
well, in a world of harm and hurt and extraction and exploitation, to get people to believe that another world is possible and that it is limitless and that it is abundant is really difficult to see when rent is due tomorrow and your kids need new shoes today, and the transit that you're taking, the bus didn't come for the third day in a row and you're about to lose your job, and then you need to look for something both internal and external to blame for that. And that's where we see the breakdown of all those identities that I just spoke about. It's really hard to hold on and grasp when you can see right in front of me, I can see Emily Louie, so that is the pain point that I'm dealing with right here, right now. And all of the systems behind you are really difficult to see because they're invisibilized, and they're invisibilized on purpose, and they're kept quiet on purpose so that people don't start to look for the systems that are causing them harm. And so that's the job of a community organizer, and that's the job of us in collective solidarity, is to start to educate and visibilize and organize people into seeing those systems in everyday life. So when the next time this happens, they don't just see Emily Louie, they see all the systems behind that have caused the harm, and they know that interpersonal relationships have a place, but it's really the systemic and institutional that is holding them in place and doing the actual harm. So that was a very long answer that I hope you'll edit down, but that's sort of what I do and what the challenges are.
What inspired you to start Cooperation Buffalo?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't think many people actually know that I'm a co-founder of Cooperation Buffalo. It's one of those things I just do instead of tell. I think that when they're made visible again in the world and people see businesses that are, and the change that we need being implemented, it's one of those things that I don't feel that we need to talk about as much as we need to be about. And one of the reasons that I started Cooperation Buffalo is because my experience at Buffalo First was that when I arrived, there were many locally owned and independent businesses that I was in relationship with as a director. Most of those businesses were white owned, and most of them did not actually have the right framework for justice. I think, again, they had more of a charitable framework, and it really was about shifting power from one sector of the white economy to the other. And I didn't find this equitable, fair, or just, or sustainable. for us as a city, for us as a people, and for the overarching mission of what I think is right. And
can I ask you, so Buffalo First is is supposed to help businesses, startup businesses?
Yep. It's basically I don't want to use the word chamber of commerce, but it's essentially a chamber of commerce for local independent businesses that are more progressively minded. And yet I think that it did not have a racial justice overlay or anti-oppression framework, which meant that we, as I just said, were just shifting money from one sector of the white economy to the other. And so that wasn't aligned with my values. And so I really took a lot of stock in that. I actually just posted yesterday, I know that you've had Ben Siegel on this show before, and he was the editor of Block Club, and I've written very significantly about my takeaways from Buffalo First that you could find in a past issue online if you were so inclined. Maybe you could link with the podcast to that story. Because I give a rundown about the values and a lot of the questions that we have been talking about and debating here today, and so I've been able to kind of give and ruminate on what would it be like to create again a vehicle for change and a for-profit and seizing the means of production in a Marxist framework. What would that look like? And it would not look like this organization, unfortunately. So I left there, and then with a couple people who had been working, in a similar sector, one of the co-founders of Bread Hive, which is wildly popular, and on the west side, a bakery, we started Cooperation Buffalo, and it has met what I envisioned it to do, really, which is really... sometimes that doesn't work out. Sometimes you envision something, and then when it's implemented, the theory was better than the implementation. But in this instance, it has been doing what we intended for it to do. So, worker power and solidarity has been strong. More broadly speaking, Cooperation Buffalo has incubated a lot of different and economically marginalized peoples in its history, and that's our starting point. Whether it's feminized labor, as the Rose Garden was our first conversion, and as a preschool, notoriously underpaid our preschool teachers. My wife was one for 20 years. She might as well have not even had gone to school, because she's it's the worst paid job that there is, and these are the people who are raising our babies. It's unbelievably wrong how little they're paid. So their economic solidarity and the ability for them to create a worker cooperative has greatly grown their financial security and ability to be paid a fair wage. We have queer and trans people who have started cafes in Rochester and here in Buffalo. We've had members of the Black and Brown communities on the east side and west side, respectively, who have started various businesses, and it's really impressive to see, when given the opportunity, the ingenuity and creativity that comes from people being able to think outside the box, as we would say in quotes, and to think about what they want to do with a business when given the chance. So all of that has been really successful, and we're really excited that we've also started a non-extractive loan fund. There's a partner organization that we have nationally that gives us the money to loan to businesses that are starting up, and then that money stays here in Buffalo. It doesn't go back to them, and that way we can localize the loan fund and make it non-extractive, because it doesn't leave the community and just recycles. Cool. So all of this has been really, really good work and impressive, but I don't take any credit for it at this point. It's all our staff that is incredibly outstanding, and you should familiarize yourself with them. Really, some of the bright lights in Buffalo.
We should also say, just to clarify for anyone who's listening and maybe doesn't know, completely understand the cooperative owned business model. Can you give a quick 101? What does it mean to be cooperative owned?
Yeah, so
or
even
worker
that,
owned,
I was
sorry.
Worker owned is better, because there's actually a number of consumer co-ops,
right?
So that
Lexington
is actually
Co-op,
exactly,
which is different.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So in a worker cooperative model, that's literally when the workers are the owners of the business, and it's been incorporated as such. They make collective decisions. They are the bookkeepers. They are the they come up with the finances. They are doing, if it's a cafe, all the ordering and back end. And then, they have a stake at the end of the day about what happens to this business because they are the collective owners of it. And so this model, although the share of it is still, I think, under 5% in the United States, it's becoming increasingly powerful as an economic tool and as worker power and unionization and reunionization have become incredibly important. And from nonprofit sector to Starbucks, which has hundreds of stores in less than a year that have been unionized, cooperative ownership is similar in that it's workers saying that, whether it's a legacy business of someone retiring and they're taking over, or it's a startup of saying, we can do this beyond just what the boss is. I'm kind of sick and tired of being told what to do. I think that I can do this because I'm an expert, given my lived experience in the sector, or my passion or interest and love. Are really seizing the means of production, as I said before, and going and creating these enterprises. So even though we've been working on this for almost a decade, I think it was it's almost been a decade that we were in my living room and Sweetness 7. We would get up at 7 a.m., 6 a.m. meetings, and we would kind of draw it out, map it out, what it was going to be like, and then we finally said, okay, we need to stop being perfectionists, and we need to just go for it and rip the Band-Aid, and we have. And since that point, we I think again we're just seeing this upswing of worker power and worker solidarity that we couldn't have timed any better. And so Cooperation Buffalo has really breathed new life into, along with so many others, the movement for labor rights. So we're really excited to be part of it.
Can we talk about you meeting AOC for a second?
Yeah.
And also about India Walton and her campaign. But so give us a little info about
AOC.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I love this story actually because and again, it doesn't even feature me prominently. It's again, my wife Jennifer is just amazing.
The best.
Yeah, she's the best. And so of course, the India Walton campaign, I think, is the best thing that happened to Buffalo in a century. And I'm not even being hyperbolic when I say that. It just gave so much fresh hope and energy, and people who would never have been involved in politics were involved in a way that was so inspiring. So many young people, so many divergent communities coming together. And if we talked about earlier, our goal is really to bring these divergent or seemingly divergent communities, which I would argue aren't divergent communities, but they're all together, communities together. Then that campaign did it in a way that I haven't seen in my hometown for my whole life, which I'm 37 years old and will be 38 in March. So that to me is an accomplishment of and by itself, right?
100%. And we should just say, for anyone who maybe isn't in Buffalo locally, she ran for mayor,
right?
Going against someone who's been in the role for the last 15 years and has a whole load of issues.
Yeah, and has a whole lot of backing from the Democratic Party and from the powers that be, and it really shocked the world, not just Buffalo or the country, but the world, when she beat him in the primary, which usually then historically has gone on to be the mayor, but in this instance, unfortunately, that did not happen. But in this instance, when I was one of the lucky people that outside of her family, that she was the first to tell that she was going to run for mayor, I told her go for it and that I would be behind her 100%, which I was, or I feel that I was. And, we tried to make a run in the idea, and what we shared with people that didn't believe us and thought that and I was in the room many times when she was told that she should go run for school board or for common council or for anything lesser than what she was saying. We would tell people that the blueprint was essentially that India was going to energize people here on the ground. She was going to talk about COVID, her experience as a nurse, as a mother, why everyday people, and that's the basis of movement politics, should be involved in elected office because they are experts by virtue of the fact that they live the experience every day, and you don't need fancy degrees and diplomas in order to run for elected office, and we need to make it easier for people to do that. We told them that her story would inspire people, which it did, and then we said that we would get national recognition and that we would keep the ball rolling and that this story would become a story, which it did.
Yeah.
And everything that we said was going to happen, happened. Well, then, she was getting all these endorsements and she would call me. And of course, we're just like, we're just like two people from Buffalo. So like for us, we're like, this is really, like, wait, the New Yorker's gonna like profile you? Like Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor like wants to do a long piece on you, a long read. And The Guardian and, just these incredible publications that are reserved for, intellectuals and celebrities and other people that are not us, right? So I had told India at some point that it was, it was going to get big and it was going to get bigger. And I was like, I have not asked for one thing in this entire campaign. And I don't want anything. But what I do want is to meet AOC. And India was like, I hear you for sure. And like there was a moment where it was like, oh, Bernie might come. And then it was like, who's going to end up coming, right? I didn't even really ask to meet Bernie, which I have met Bernie in New Hampshire once, but I'm even saying that like, this was my target, AOC, this is all it, right? So the time came where AOC was going to do a big rally, it was going to be get out the vote, it was going to be the beginning of early voting, and essentially India was like, you know who's coming, don't you? And I was like, who's that? And it's like, AOC. And I was like, India. Like I it's the only time I was like, no, but for real, like here's my favor. I'm pulling the like personal card.
This is it.
And like this is it. Like I have asked for nothing, this is all I want. And she came through. She came through big time. There was a public, facing at the town ballroom and there was a big, there were hundreds of people. The place was jam-packed. Mm-hmm. But the night before she had come in and she was supposed to do meetings with the media, and the media, each person got like I think 8 minutes or something. It was very specific. They got to ask their questions for 8 minutes. Their individual crew and outlet got to like have that time, and then it would go to the next media. So right after that, they scheduled for me, my wife Jennifer, and then like a couple other people that were WFPers, like Working Families Party. Mm-hmm. I'll try not to use acronyms.
Thank you.
Working Families Party folks to come in and to meet AOC. And so I was like super nervous. And like, of course, like when we get our like moment to say like our thing to her, I'm like, hello, yes, my name is Harper Bishop, and I just want to say thank you so much for all the work you do for housing justice. Here I work at Push Buffalo, and we're trying to make a homes guarantee, and just like some bullshit about like right. the topic that I'm thinking about right. that I want to, out of all the things, thank her for, right? Yeah. But mostly it's just like me just like being like a mess and you're amazing and that's it. And then Jennifer, though, and this is why she's the best. Yeah. She came as a true organizer should, with like an ask and a demand, and like was like, hello, I have these earrings for you, of which AOC like immediately couldn't get them on, but she like held them up and took a photo with like branded Justice for Migrant Families and like totally God. Like, thumbs up. Amazing. And Jennifer's like, there are women in Rensselaer County right now who need to be, released from detention, and you have the ability to do that because you're like their congresswoman, right? Like, and so she, like you're a respected New York congresswoman essentially, and so like gave her exact details on what needed to happen, who they could contact, and like AOC was like, thank you for this important information. Do I have this written down? Like, basically like my staff will follow up on this, da da da. And I was just like, are you like here? I'm just a babbling fool. And Jennifer, meanwhile, is like, here, take the Justice for Migrant Families branded shit, and I have an ask for you, which is totally appropriate and what should be happening from an organizing perspective. And I was just like, oh my God, I am totally in love with my wife. Yeah. Like, she is so fucking boss.
She came to win.
Yeah, like, she's so boss. And, like, that is why she wins, because she wasn't like, I'm going to use this, like, 30 seconds to give you bullshit about yourself that you already know. Yeah.
That's so great. And we should say, too, Jennifer, just if it isn't already clear, Jennifer is the executive director for Justice for Migrant Families.
Yes.
What is next for you? You are, you're the interim director for Our City Action. So what's in the works?
Some friends and comrades have started a worker cooperative called Rose J Consulting. And to be completely honest, the nonprofit sector, I've been in it for many, many years, and it has gotten harder every single time to start over and to be part of it. And there's pros and cons, and so I won't disparage in any way the ecosystem that we need and we need to build, and the systems that we need to have in order to organize for the change that we need. So in no way am I taking away from anyone that is in the nonprofit sector or is doing that work. We need it to be done. I believe in some way. Yet I think for me it's a time to try to do something different, and that is a challenge for me because it's easy to stay in the groove and stay in my comfort zone and where I've built over almost 15 years of experience at this point in nonprofit management, and to take those skills and know that they're transferable and that they can go to something that I think will give me more life. And also those dear little children that you spoke about earlier, it really is my joy to be able to be with the 2.5-year-old on Tuesdays and Thursdays and to spend more time intentionally with my family. And that really is where my focus and concentration is now. I know it's a cheesy thing that like celebrities say and like when they ditch out on the thing that they're currently doing. But it's not, I really, truly, genuinely mean it. Is like that is where my focus is, and to make sure that these two beautiful kids have all the opportunities that they need to really live a really great life and to thrive. So this will give me the flexibility I need and the anger management I need to move into a new space and to challenge myself in a new way. Yeah. And I think that of itself is a brave new world for me.
All right, so I had like 17 more questions, but we don't have time for that. So instead I've got...
Because I talk too much, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. I love it. So we've got 11 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Ready? Okay.
Let's go.
Question number 1. Healthy habit you always stick to.
Oh my God. I don't always, it's like a really hard word.
I know. I always say, well, you brush your teeth. Always. You go to sleep at night.
This is true. Well, I will say that that's actually where my mind went, was that I do try to, for the most part, get to bed before midnight, and I have been doing that really consistently for the past year.
That's good. So important. Healthy habit you are trying to implement.
I need to eat less sugar. I truly do. And it's now external pressure around me. So yes, less sugar.
Yeah, me too. Nonprofit you love and support. You have to just pick one. Which
Justice
one would you
for
like
Migrant Families, and that's truly how I feel about it. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Anything that they're doing, I'm behind it.
It's beautiful. I'll link to it in the show notes so you can learn more. Favorite thing that you make?
My wife has said that I'm really good at making salmon, but I've internalized that. I think I'm really good at it, and I really enjoy it, and it's pretty healthy.
Yeah, that's really good. How do you make it? Like, what kind of what?
No, I don't like really do anything special. I'm just like
it's
just that I like fish goes wrong and bad for people because they aren't paying attention, and I seriously pay attention to my fish. So it's just like oil and pepper, but it's like really watched and done pretty perfectly because I have eagle eyes on it.
Yeah.
It's not just like happening,
Yeah.
Passively.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a passive cooker, so it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
I make salmon. I bake salmon. I'll put it like, cool. This is my favorite way to make salmon. Everyone should do this. It's so easy. Tin foil, sliced lemons.
Yes.
Put the salmon down, and then butter. Grass-fed is preferred. On top, fold.
In case you didn't know who this podcast was for.
Fold it all in so that the tin foil is all closed up.
Yeah.
Pop it in there 30 minutes at like 350, and you have this like buttery, lemony, delicious salmon.
Wow.
Mashed potatoes on the side, asparagus.
I think I'm going to do, well, that's it.
Okay, so now this is a tricky one because you're still not drinking, right?
I'm not drinking.
Yeah, you are not drinking. Good for you. So what's your...
Oh, wait, I should have said that.
Yeah, that's a healthy habit you stick to. You don't drink.
Yeah, I don't drink.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite drink to just enjoy?
It's seltzer for
sure.
And,
Do you have a favorite flavor?
I go through phases. So
What's the current season?
I think it's like cherry right now.
Cherry.
Okay, wow. The judgment on that was fierce.
Because like cherry tastes like liquid Tylenol. You know what I mean? Like.
Okay.
Which brand?
Let's bring this all the way around. Let's bring it all the way around. I didn't judge you for Christmas music. Didn't he quote? Why do people have to get on people about being happy?
Cherry, right. Yeah, that's great. Okay. I like grapefruit, but that's fine. Favorite mantra or affirmation? Like, what do you tell yourself when, like, shit's really hard?
I was actually telling Jennifer that what started out as, like, more of an Irish joke between us has become actually my life mantra, which is, 'tis better to laugh than to cry.
It's true. That's true.
So I always pick the, like, wow, that is so tragic. I could cry, but I'm just gonna laugh because it's so absurd. And I think it's a really good, like, it's a good mantra to just hold in general.
Yeah. I love that. Podcast you highly recommend?
This one, clearly, I mean...
Obviously, thank you.
But besides this one, just because I am on the Irish kick, but it is really amazing, The Irish Passport. I have learned so much about Irish history, culture, and it's a really radical podcast, so a lot of social movement things come up as well, and you'll learn actually about landlords and housing justice. A lot of what they're doing in Ireland is pretty incredible, along with ballot initiatives like abortion and same-sex marriage. Those were put to the ballot and have been popularized in Ireland, a very Catholic country. Mm-hmm. And so just to see the changing times in Ireland and how the people are leading there has just been incredibly inspiring. And just, again, I think for anyone who is interested in social justice, if you're thinking about an oppressed country and, and thinking about the dynamic between England and Ireland and what that is about, if you don't know, you'll learn it in this in this podcast, and I find it incredibly fascinating. We are usually listening to it when we're headed home to Boston, where Jennifer's from, where she is very Irish and very Bostonian.
Love that.
But I love it.
Very cool. All the music in the world is gone except for the music from one artist or band. Goodness. Who would you pick?
You're just asking the easy ones, aren't you? I'm gonna go with probably Janelle Monáe. Can't really go many places without her.
What is a hobby or interest you have that you think most people wouldn't know about you?
Oh. Sometimes I reveal too much, and this I will also reveal too much so that people can laugh at me, but I do it on purpose sometimes, and this one is definitely intentional. Speaking of, like, let's not rain on people's parade, because my life is so complex and my mind is always working, I am one of those people who truly love a good Hallmark movie. Yes. And they're terrible. They reinforce pretty much everything that I fight against, and whiteness and heteronormativity, misogyny, all of it. And yet I'm like, I love that when I turn this on, I know how this is ending. And there's no variables in between, and I can just coast. And many of them, bonus, are filmed in my hometown of East Aurora, New York.
It's true.
So it's also nostalgic because I'm like, oh, there is the place where I go walking, in the winter. Yeah. There is my school. There is so it's like pretty funny to be like East Aurora is like ground zero for Hallmark movies, which again is totally ridiculous, and I love. That was a big reveal I gave you. I just want you to know.
Oh boy.
I'll be teased.
You're anytime here first.
Oh, Jennifer loves telling people this because then they just like mock me incessantly. Hilarious. So this is like the one takeaway people will have. They'll be like, I heard you on that podcast. I don't remember anything but Hallmark movies.
No, wait.
Christmas movies.
Okay, Hallmark, that's what I wanted
Hallmark
to clarify.
Christmas movies.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
It's not just Hallmark movies. Sorry,
because those are different.
I left out an important word.
I was going to follow up on that.
Christmas movies, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was in Public Espresso, and they were filming one in, swear to God, just a couple weeks ago.
That's what I'm saying,
I am here for the Hallmark movies. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Favorite place you've ever visited?
Oh my gosh. This is ridiculous. I have so many favorites. I think obviously Paris it's a cliche for a reason. I think like it definitely ranks up there.
Yeah.
But I would say personally, Jerusalem is probably the most significant place and just like to me, again, theologically, politically, socially, all the things. It's where the world's religions kind of all come together. And my first flat was when I was in college. I was, just not even a mile from the Western Wall, which is like an incredible experience for anyone. I felt like I was right out of a history book. And just, as someone, again, who grew up how we did, just thinking about the significance of that place is pretty momentous and important to me personally. So I think that just holds a pretty significant place. And it's
meaningful.
Pretty meaningful. Yeah.
Cool. Last question. Will the Bills win the Super Bowl in 2023?
Fuck yeah, I don't even need that question today. And I am team let's go. I'm a believer, and I am also scared that our city won't exist after that date.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that have you noticed that the chatter during the games isn't just us passively watching the game and if they do something fine, it's intensity that I've never experienced, and then people projecting about that day. The fact that the Buffalo psyche can even get to people thinking about the aftermath of a Super Bowl party to me, or a Super Bowl win, is monumental.
Right.
And people are the Coast Guard will have to be brought in. I think there'll be a prohibition of alcohol after 2 weeks to make people go back to work. It's truly hilarious, and also this alternative universe that we're living in, where people are just projecting what will life be like post Super Bowl, and I just don't know that there's anything coming back from it. Our GDP will the whole economy will literally stop, and it will just be all on parties in the streets in Zubas for weeks, if not months.
It's gonna light on fire.
I'm scared. I'm scared, but I'm a hell to the
Yeah.
Hell to the on the Super Bowl W. Excellent. You heard it here. Probably not first, but
you heard it here 17th.
But it's really exciting stuff.
It is. Well, Harper Bishop, thank you so much for coming in today.
Oh, my
We
pleasure.
barely scratched the surface, but I have 10 minutes left of my time here in the studio, and I have to get it onto my little stick thing that I can't remember the name of it. What are they called?
Jump drives.
Jump drive. So we have to end here.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming. And thank you all for listening. I will put as many things in the show notes that we talked about as possible. There will be so many organizations because Harper is involved in so many things. Also, please follow me at Mostly All Figured Out. I have not done a very good job, like I said last week, of posting every day. I think I posted 3 days. That's not quite 7. But we're working on it. We'll get better. And how happy.
Go Bills.
And go Bills. Okay, bye.